Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, to all sages and saints, and to Sage Narada, and to each of you divine soul watching today's satsang. So today we will be covering Sutra number 48 from the Narada Bhakti Sutras, chapter 2, Glory of Supreme Devotion. Commentaries by my Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. Sutra number 48, chapter number 2, Glory of Supreme Devotion. The sutra is Yah Karma Phalam Tyajati Karmani Sanyasti Tato Nirdvandvo Bhavati. Again, Yah Karma Phalam त्यजति कर्माणि संन्यस्ति tato nirdvandvo bhavati. Meaning, he crosses Maya who gives up the fruits of action, renounces the karmas themselves, and thus becomes free of the pairs of opposites. Meaning, Sage Narada is explaining karma phala tyaga. Karma phal means the fruit of the actions. Tyaga means to renounce. He says, giving up the fruits of karmas. A devotee must gain the deep insight that involvement in sakamya karma, or actions performed with a selfish expectation, sakamya. So it's like, God, if you do this for me, I will do this for you. More like trading. That is selfish expectation, is the root cause of repeated embodiments. So even though God does give us what we ask for, and sometimes He doesn't, depending on our karmas, but if we do get it, those, since they were with an expectation, they keep us bound to the world process. Therefore, he must pursue the path of nishkamya karma, action or selfless actions performed without any selfish expectations. If we want to cut the bonds of life and death, of perpetual the cycles, then we will have to, there is no other way, we have to become selfless and connect with everybody and look at this as God's world and look at everyone as our family members. That is, of course, keeping the practical realities in mind, but to not have selfish expectations. That's the key here. In order to renounce egoistic involvement in action, the following attitudes are to be developed. So how do we get to that state? There are different ways to do it, and we will just talk about those 5 attitudes or bhavas. Bhavas are emotions and sentiments with which we follow this. One is the puja bhava. Puja is the attitude of worshipping God through one's actions in daily life. So you think whatever action you're doing is an offering to God. So that's the puja bhav. He must develop an internal attitude. It is to please God, to express your love for the Supreme Self. The second one is anasakti bhava, which means unattachment, non-attachment, the attitude of detachment. So a devotee should remain egoistically detached from the action performed as well as its fruits. So when we do the action, we should then move on. No point thinking about what will happen, will I get the result or not. You continue to do your job. And this is what Lord Krishna also guides us in chapter 2, shloka number 47 to Arjuna. He says, Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which means you have the right to an action but not to its fruit. So don't get all caught up with the results, where most of us are caught up in that. Therefore, our actions are also not totally selfless. So that's what anasakti means. We are unattached. If you're totally unattached and you're not worried about the results, then you become an instrument in the divine hands. Then it becomes much easier. So this world is sustained by a divine plan, which we forget, that the sun rises every morning, the breeze comes up, the birds chirp, and the whole cosmos is working according to a specific divine plan. We are part of that plan. Therefore, even though it is natural to entertain expectations, an aspirant must keep his heart open to unexpected possibilities in every action. It may succeed, it may not succeed. If expectations are not fulfilled, he must not be discouraged or grief stricken. If something doesn't go according to your expectation, have patience, because in a divinely ordained world, what seems as a frustrating development for the ego is in fact meaningful development for the spirit. There's deep intelligence behind it. So if we have faith, we will have that trust that God knows what's best for us. So that's that bhava, anasakti bhava. The third one is called nimitta bhava. Nimitta bhava means become an instrument in God's hand, the attitude of being an instrument, and become a flute on Krishna's lips. What a beautiful thought. And then when he picks up and he plays, that music will be divine, that will come out of you, which is what all the sages and saints are. They are divine channels. They have become instruments in the divine plan and thus are helping humanity in multitude of ways. So let the divine plan unfold also within your personality. A devotee is ever watchful and vigilant towards the whispers of the ego. So this is one thing we have to be very cautious about, because the ego can distract us and also can confuse us. So instead of asserting the ego, glorifying himself on the successful performance of a work, or sorrowing over the unsuccessful performance of a work, a devotee recognizes the operation of divine will through his personality. So he understands that whatever is happening, there is a deep intelligence behind him that is working through him. He allows himself to be led by the divine will, and with the increasing conviction that the supreme self within is the ocean of compassion and love. So he understands that there is deep love behind every action, whether outwardly it may seem productive or unproductive, failure or success. Beyond all that, there is the deep compassion of the Divine Mother. So when you have this level of trust and feeling, it's like a little child who completely trusts his mother and knows that the mother only wants the best for the child. And that is called the Nimitta Bhava. And the fourth one is called Sakshi Bhava, which means the attitude of being a witness, Sakshi. As the mind is purified, a devotee develops a subtle reasoning faculty that enables him to be a mere spectator or a witness to all favorable and unfavorable conditions in life. He is not getting agitated. He just becomes like a witness, as if you are watching the news, for example. You're not impacted so much at your personal level, but when something happens to us, we are very much affected. And that's where our sadhana comes in, where we have to say, this too shall pass away. He maintains an internal inner attitude that the gunas, in the form of ego, intellect, mind, senses, these gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, they will continue to operate in the forms of these objects of the senses. And whereas the self is always detached and as a witness. So that sakshi, that witness, is your true consciousness. And this whole drama of the world process is where we are getting stuck in the name and form and getting all entangled up. But if we become a witness from far, we look at the show. And finally, the fifth bhava is called Ishwar Arpana Bhava, which means the attitude of surrender to the divine self. Arpan means to offer. So we are offering ourselves to God, and whatever we know, whatever we do, we become as an instrument, and we say, God, it belongs to you. With the increasing purity of heart, a devotee brings about an integral surrender of his personality to the divine self. And when the process of surrender is complete, the devotee has ascended the summit of the journey. So you continue to go on with all these wonderful bhavas. So as you can see, these are very wonderful sentiments on the path of devotion, and we should try to cultivate as many of them as we can if we really are serious aspirants on this holy path. So we will be covering part 2 of this sutra tomorrow. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.